To me, what really matters is service. I want to serve people. I want to help people.
Why is it that this lesson to serve is very hard to find in this world?
We don't want the world to serve. We want the world to consume. We want the world to achieve, because if they don't achieve, they don't consume. If they don't consume, we run out of business. When we are at the receiving end of service, somebody selflessly serves us, we know what that feels like. It strikes a chord deep there within our souls. It's not the mind, it's not the ego, it's not the intellect. So we know what it feels like, and we know what it feels like when we serve others. So it's just a matter of putting these two together. People have that experience and now creating that narrative, and that's how a revolution can happen.
Talk to me about guilt. Talk to me about your father.
Oh, that's a story. That's a story, man. My mom's looking at this saying, come on, son, you can't be doing this to him. Dad's really in a bad shape. It'd be good if you could come see him. And that year he said to me, son, would you mind bringing the recordings of your lectures in London for me? That was like a joyful moment for me. And in just about 2 or 3 weeks, my mom calls me and says, Dad's gone. He's gone. And that's what happens with a lot of our lives. We lose those opportunities to reconcile. Saying a sorry really doesn't mean you're wrong. It just means that you value the person and the relationship more than being right. We have a generation of youngsters who are very authentic. We have a generation who really believes in purpose. #purpose is probably the highest used hashtag. They may or may not understand what it means fully yet. They may or may not know it very well. They may not know the nuances of it. But they have the willingness to live by purpose.
The world is changing. Inspiration is everywhere. It has never been so easy to connect, share, and bring people together. We're learning from others and finding the best in ourselves. Challenging our beliefs. Sharing our vulnerability. Overcoming our fears. Transforming ourselves so we can transform the world. How far can we go?
This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is... This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is Gaur Gopal Das, the Indian monk, lifestyle coach, motivational speaker, and author. You spent the early part of your career working as an electrical engineer for Hewlett-Packard before leaving the company to pursue life as a monk at an ashram in Mumbai. There, you've studied ancient wisdom and philosophy for the past 26 years while traveling the world speaking to universities, charities, governments, and the United Nations. You have nearly 5 million followers on YouTube and over 1 billion views across social media, where you post regular content, helping others to achieve fulfillment in their lives. In 2018, you published Life's Amazing Secrets, which focuses on how to find balance and purpose. And your second book, The Way of the Monk, outlines the 4 steps to peace and lasting happiness. Your latest, Energize Your Mind, A Monk's Guide to Mindful Living, looks at how all of us can master our thoughts, feelings, and emotions in order to achieve our goals and improve our mental health once and for all. Gaur, welcome to London Real.
Thank you very much, Brian, for having me over on London Real. I've seen so many of these episodes and I really enjoy watching this show.
Oh, wow. That means so much. I really appreciate it. And
thank you very much.
No, it's my pleasure. I can't wait to jump into it. I love watching your videos on YouTube.
Oh, thank you.
So many great lessons and parables, and you got this great energetic style. And then we have a bunch of links because we had Radhadat Swami here.
That's right.
I think was your original mentor in Mumbai. And
yes.
He had mentored Jay Shetty, who was on the show, and there's all these amazing
Absolutely. The world's a small place.
Yeah.
And all these connections happen. And like I said earlier, I come here and I feel like I know you for so long. And these are the connections we have. Like we often say, don't we? We are not human beings on a spiritual journey, but we are spiritual beings on a human journey. So since we are all spiritual, if we were just humans, this energy wouldn't connect, but we are spiritual beings on a human journey, and suddenly this connect happens and all of these connections come forth, and here we are, sitting and feeling so deeply connected.
Yeah, there's more happening here than just a couple of random guys bumping into each other, right? There's like energy connections between even the people I just mentioned, right? Pulling us in these different spheres.
Right.
And there's more going on than meets the eye,
Yes,
I would say.
yes.
Now, you studied electrical engineering.
Correct.
I studied mechanical engineering at MIT. And I don't know about where you went to school, but where I went to school, we didn't talk about spiritualness or energy.
Correct.
Matter of fact, I was taught by science that doesn't exist. But now as I've gotten older and I've talked to incredible people like you, I'm starting to realize that, yeah, there's more going on here than meets the eye.
Right.
How did you start to realize that? Did you always know that? Or were you a hardcore engineer? And did you have to retrain your mind to be aware of, like you said, these energy fields or more going on?
Right. I think being born in India, it came very easy from a family tradition and a family culture, like to be able to pursue or explore some kind of spirituality. It was a part of the Indian culture and Indian families. So as I was being brought up at home by my family, my parents, they weren't like spiritual, but they had that element in them. And because that element was there, it wasn't an alien thing for me. Right. So I was exploring answers to questions, existential questions, life questions, questions like what happens after death. I didn't know. And for the very first time I attended a funeral was when I was 21 years old, is when I for the first time saw a dead body in front of me. My family didn't allow me to go for a funeral until then, you know. So these existential questions, what exists after this life ends? Or was there a life before this? You know, are we all connected in some way? Is there a purpose to life? Like Mark Twain said, didn't he, that there are two most important days in your life. One is the day you were born, and second is the day you find out why. And that existential question, why was I born? I mean, I'm born, I'm studying engineering, I have a job at Hewlett Packard. Why am I born? Is there a purpose? Is there something more than just paying taxes? Is there something more than just earning a salary? Is there something more than just achieving that position up there? Is there something more than just having a family? Is there something more than just having a luxurious life? Is there something more? That existential question, why was I born, was there nagging me at the back of my mind. So I was exploring different paths, spiritual paths, religions, trying to find answers to these questions. And while working at Hewlett Packard, HP, I made this simple calculation in my mind that if you were to work for an average about 8 hours a day, we spend 8 hours a day at our workplace, and if we do a 5 days work week, that's 40 hours at our workplace, spent a week. And if we work a 50-week year, 2 weeks of holidays, it's 2,000 hours at our workplace a year. And if we, on an average, work for about 45 years, it's 90,000 hours of my life are being spent at my workplace. It's a daunting number. That accounts to about 10 years of my life. And then I asked myself this question, do I see myself doing what I'm doing right now for 90,000 hours? It's paying me well. It's giving me a good, thick, fat paycheck.
And high status.
And high status.
Parents are proud.
Parents are proud. But is it fulfilling me? Is it satisfying me? This is what people just can't get today. So much about getting the numbers, but it's not about finding fulfillment as well today. So that was that question that I had. And this is what then, these two things combine, my spiritual calling and this moment of epiphany that, you know, I don't think I can see myself doing this. But the obvious question was, what do I see myself doing? And that's when then I got interested in spirituality even more. It was there as a part of the family culture, but it kind of developed more, grew more within me with all these realizations and with all of this reflections and contemplation that I had in my mind as I was working. Yeah, that was the journey.
Was there a day you just decided, I'm going to quit and walk out?
It's like the last straw on the camel's back. It can't be one day. It's all a pile up.
Right.
It's all kind of just brewing inside, brewing inside, brewing inside, brewing inside. And one day, there happens to be probably that one thing. The world sees that last straw on the camel's back that makes the camel sit down. People who actually see there's been a lot on the camel's back already, and this was just the last little thing that really made the camel sit. So I really don't think it was any one thing or one day that caused that change, because I feel that if it's that one thing that makes us change, it'll probably be one thing that may take us back to something else too. But if it's like deeply ingrained within ourselves, that purpose, then I feel it's sustainable. These little things that I make a shift, like it's like job hopping these days. I change a job, but then I change that job and go somewhere else because I really haven't mulled over it. I haven't allowed what I'm doing to sink. So I don't think it was that one day or that one thing. It was a journey, and I feel the journey still continues. It's a journey, and it's a lifelong journey. Sometimes I tell people, why do we have to have everything figured out right away? This urge to have everything figured out, this urge to have answers to all questions. It's a beautiful journey, and things will be revealed, the curtains will be lifted slowly yet steadily, and things will get better, clearer, and probably wait till the end of our life. So I feel it's a journey. And it was a journey, it is a journey, it will remain a journey.
So I'm having flashbacks to 2010 when I walked out of my corporate job. I was in banking here. I didn't go to an ashram, but I went to my spiritual healing place, which is this place, London Real. And
Correct.
Again, it wasn't one day, but it had been gnawing at me, and I had been, on paper, I always used to joke, my LinkedIn profile looked amazing.
Right.
From the outside, I had everything.
Correct.
I had the job, I had the car, I had the holidays, I had whatever. But then if you look deeper in my life, you could see in my big house, I was alone on the weekends, drinking myself to death. That's not good,
Of course.
And I was pursuing all these things that I had told myself would make me happy. The money would make me happy. And then I'm telling you, Gaur, one time I'm an engineer and I was looking, because in the city we got paid quarterly bonuses. And I was looking at my last 3 quarterly bonuses and they were going up. And I was like, but I'm not happier in any one of those quarters. So it was finally, I could see there was no correlation. And I took a transcendental meditation class on a whim. And about 2 weeks later, I woke up one morning and I said, what am I doing? First time ever I could actually observe Brian. And I was like, that guy's massively unhappy. This is ridiculously stupid.
Right.
And then I walked out. And then that's when the journey began.
Wow.
And it continues, like you said,
Similar stories.
Yeah, in some kind of ways.
In some ways.
And again, so I'm 11 years past that. You're more like 26 years. Those first 10 years in the ashram must have been challenging, I'm guessing, for you. Yeah. Maybe sometimes you were wondering, am I doing the right thing? Am I doing it right?
Yeah.
I'm guessing that because that's such a very new environment for you.
Yeah. I think it was a mix of things. For me to come to the ashram and to take a path like this was, I would say, my love affair. Like when you're madly in love with somebody, you really don't look at the inconveniences. It's like madly in love. You don't look at socioeconomic statuses, you don't look at upbringings, you don't look at cultural incompatibility, you don't look at ethnical differences, you don't look at anything. It's just love. And when you're so absolutely, madly, insanely in love, everything else just becomes inconsequential. You just kind of take it in your stride and move on, So sometimes I joke and I say, love is blind, but marriage happens to be the eye-opener.
Oh, gosh.
because when you start spending time with somebody, then you start seeing every little nuance of their personality, which you didn't see when you were just madly in love, because you're just there with each other all the time. And I was kind of thinking, if this is my love affair in this path, this ashram life for me, it's kind of now I'm getting married. It was only love when I wanted to do it. And now it's marriage. I'm going to have to stay with this for the rest of my life. And yes, it can be an eye-opener. So that, which is why I was saying, it was a mix of things. One was it didn't seem too hard because so much love for this. And then we start living there. I was the only son. I have a younger sister, so pampered son, lovely family, beautiful childhood. I never ate anything in my childhood up until the day I came to the ashram if it wasn't made according to my dictates and demands. If my mom cooked something that I didn't want to eat, I didn't eat it. And here I come to the ashram and I have to eat food that's cooked there, the community kitchen food. I don't have a choice. There's no choices. What you're served is what you have to eat. Waking up early in the morning was a cakewalk because I anyways was an early riser before. That wasn't too hard. And then sharing space with, we were about 20 then when I joined the ashram, sharing physical space with 20 people, and we had very little space. You're like lying down on the floor right next to each other, right? We just had our little straw mats and little bed sheets, and we were using our hands as our pillows and just covering ourselves with these little bed sheets and just lying down there, sharing physical space. Even that wasn't all that hard. Waking up early wasn't hard. Food wasn't hard. Sharing physical space wasn't hard, because I think it's just that passion to do this, that love for the thing that I had chosen. You also have to share mental space. I never shared that space with anybody. We had a family of 6, my grandpa, grandma, mom, dad, me and my sister. And here I am with 20, 25 people, suddenly sharing mental space. Everybody's looking at what you're doing, everything's being observed. And everybody comes from a very educated background. There were people who'd come from universities that were way better than mine. People who'd come from corporations, they'd worked with corporations way better than mine. Yeah. And you suddenly start sharing that space with people like that who've been achievers in their field. I think those days were beautiful, because in your formative years, when you're put into that situation, you're forced to grow, you're forced to come out of that shell, you're forced to adjust, you're forced to make some compromises, you're forced to value people, you're forced to value relationships, you're forced to value the path that you've chosen. And I think, yes, there were a few of these inconveniences, but I feel inconveniences are distractions when our eyes are off our goal. When our eyes are so focused on what we want to do, we don't even, not that we don't see them, but we are okay with them. Mm-hmm. And I think that's how time really flew by. You know, it was a mix of things. And then Radhanath Swami, of course, my spiritual teacher, my mentor, my guru. Oh, he's such an amazing man.
What makes him amazing?
His wisdom, of course, his wisdom, his spiritual level. You know, you don't meet so many people who are on a different plane.
Right.
You're constantly interacting with people who are on the same plane as ours. And when you meet somebody who's on such a higher plane than yours, you just get so drawn into that space, so drawn into that energy, so drawn into that zone, you know. Right. So it was his spiritual level, his spiritual energy, of course his wisdom. And I just found in him a person who cares, a person who loves. You know, I read this beautiful quote, it's in the first book I wrote, which said, I don't care how much you know until I know how much you care. You know, there's so many people who know, but they don't care a damn who you are. You know, they'll ask you how you are and what's happening with you, and they're barely interested in listening to your answers. They don't care. You know, Radhanath Swami says something interesting. He said once, I think in a conversation he was mentioning, he said the warmth of love is so much more important than the light of knowledge. You know, imagine you're in Chicago. It's minus 26 degrees Celsius. I was there once in February. Oh, goodness me. Horror. That cold is just horrifying. And then the wind factor adds to the chill. It's like swords slashing into your face when you walk out. minus 26 degrees Celsius. Imagine you're in your house, it's night, it's like 9:30 and the lights go off. It's okay, you can still live in darkness. It's all right, you'll manage. Imagine the heating goes on. I'll die to death if it's minus 26. Which is why in a situation like that, warmth is so much more important than light. And when I heard that quote that Radhanath Swami once was in a conversation, he was mentioning this, that the warmth of love is so much important than the light of knowledge. A person who cares, a person who genuinely feels, a person who genuinely wishes well for you. In a world where everybody's so narcissistic, so self-centered, everybody's just about them. And then you find somebody who truly cares for you as a well-wisher. Oh, that was such a breath of fresh air. So I found in him that, like I said, that spiritual energy, of course, the wisdom, but a person who truly cares, a person who truly loves. And I haven't seen him change. I know him for the last 26 years. And back in the day, he wasn't such a known figure. Right. It's in his journey that he started kind of being known to people out there. And through that entire journey, he hasn't changed. All this popularity, all this fame to him, and people know him today. He's a big spiritual leader. He's a person who cares, a genuine well-wisher. So he was there available in the ashram. Yeah. So all these inconveniences were like, then it's fine, it's like I didn't feel I left home to come here. I felt I came to a second home. So my family home's one home, but here's another home now.
When did you finally feel that maybe you could pass that wisdom on to others? Like, I'm just curious, is it like after 10 years where some of the newer members are looking to you? Is it after 20 years where you're comfortable to speak in front of people, or did that just happen right away? What was your evolution like?
Yeah.
Because now you speak in front of all these crowds. I see your videos on YouTube, and like you're entertaining them, you're cracking jokes. They're with you, they're laughing. They're you know what you're doing now.
Yeah. I think when I came to the ashram, one of the things that Radhanath Swami wanted us to do as a teacher and as a guide was to start speaking to people already, from day one.
I like him even more.
Day one.
Right.
Share what you've learned. Share what you've learned. Because the best way to learn is to share. The best way to remember something is to repeat. Repeat, not just like repeat as in word by word, go by the letter of the law, but understanding the spirit behind the law, and share it based on our understanding, based on our realization, based on our own context. There's the text, but then there's the context. And it's the context that renders so much value and meaning to the text. So I remember I think within the first 3 days of my coming to the ashram, they wanted me to go and speak to people. And I was like, gosh, how do you do that? What do I say? And some of the senior monks there said, just say what you've learned, just share, just speak to them. Just speak to them, just share what you've learned. And I feel it was so beautiful. It was so beautiful because then it just became a part of you, right? And then he made this thing for us in the ashram, because in the journey of sharing what you've learned with others, you are evolving as an individual. People are probably listening to you, connecting to you. They start respecting you. They start putting you on a pedestal, worshipping you, maybe admiring you. There's a huge fan followership that you get. It's just but natural when you start sharing something that's so heartfelt that you've received. It's not that you're going and giving a lecture, or you're doing a workshop, or you're doing a seminar. You're just sharing your heart. And then people connect because you're sharing your heart. It's a very different space. It's not the head space, it's the heart space. So when you do that, these are just consequences of what you do. Position and fame and numbers and followership and fans, all of this just comes as a consequence. And I think those formative years with Radhanath Swami, I cannot thank him enough for what he's given me. He taught us, you be a lion at chase and be a lamb at home. Right. When you go out there, be confident, share, speak, learn what you need to do to connect to people. When you come back, just be in that home space, in that space of humility, in that space of being a no one, nobody. Because when in that space, when I live like a nobody and then I go out. That power is something that doesn't come by just reading books, and that power is not something that comes by learning public speaking skills. That power is not something that comes by, by just oratory skills. No, it doesn't. It's a very different power. It's an internal power. So the power of humility, the power of being grounded, the power of being deeply connected to yourself, to the divine that you try to connect to, deeply try to connect to your fellow inmates there. So that teaching that came from him, I think that's been the trigger, the catalyst in my journey of evolution to what I do today. It was just like started right away, and B was this statement: be a lion at chase, but be a lamb at home. And I try my bit, not that I'm humble, not that I'm grounded, but I try my tiny bit to go back home in the ashram and just be another person. One of the things that I enjoy doing and love is listening to other monks, which just sit and listen, learn, just be there like a nobody. And it's such a beautiful space.
Is it strange to be a celebrity monk? And when you started, there were no celebrity monks.
Yeah.
Even that concept was probably completely foreign that it could ever happen. I mean, there have been some in the past, but it's usually very, very few.
Right.
But now, well, you are, and it's a thing. I mean, there's celebrity everythings now. But is that strange? Is it a natural progression? Was it weird to watch it happen?
Yeah. It felt very strange. It felt very strange initially when the whole journey started. Like I said, when you're trained to go speak out there and then come back and remain in a space of, like being just an ordinary person. And the events I was doing, the people who I was speaking to, they were respectful, obviously, but it's not like what it's today. It's not like this insane thing that like a fangirl and the fanboy, and people are like, like cheering, rooting for you, crying, doing this crazy stuff. No, nobody did that. Crazy in the sense that, to me it seems crazy. For them it's just such affection and love. So I really respect that. Yeah. But to me it sounds like, oh my gosh, what's happening here? So it was a little strange in the beginning, of course. I wasn't used to it at all. And it felt a little weird, it felt a little strange. Then I realized that to me what really matters is service. I want to serve people. I want to help people. I want to try and make a difference, not that I can, by sharing what I've learned, try and make a little tiny difference in the lives of people. Because people are just going through so much. They're going to hell in their lives. So much suffering, so much pain, so much agony, so much anguish. Right? And we could be agents of change. We could be instruments of change, to be able to bring a smile on somebody's face, to be able to help them find their purpose, to be able to help them find their space of peace and calm. So I feel that's what I really wanted to do, and that's what I want to do, and I hope, fingers crossed, that's what remains as my purpose till my last breath. I think when we met first today, I was quoting Rabindranath Tagore, who said, when I slept and I dreamt that life was joy. I woke up and I saw life was service. Then I acted and I realized service was joy, So when it comes to serving people, we're going to have to do what's required to be able to serve them. Initially, that service could be done when there were few people. The principle was still service. The mission was still to serve. The purpose was still to serve. But all this hoo-ha wasn't there around it. And today there's this whole hoo-ha around it. But if this is how I could serve people, then I realized, initially there was a little bit of discomfort. I realized, but that's what makes people happy. If one selfie taken with them makes them happy and opens their heart to this message, I'm happy to take those selfies. If coming up on stage and they're rooting for me and cheering for me and whistling for me, which was not what they would do for a monk, if that's what makes them happy, if that's what makes them open their hearts up to what I have to say, I'm okay with that. If coming up on social media and and sharing all the snippets is what makes them happy, and if this happens to be the medium through which I can serve, I'm happy to do that. So I at a point in time realized that service is the foundation, and the edifice, the building that we build upon this foundation in a way that we can serve people is going to change with time. All of our lives will change with time externally. They do. We're not going to remain the same externally. We age, our situations change, the external modalities through which we serve change. But as long as we are aligned to that lighthouse principle that I want to serve, then yes, even the discomfort is fine initially, and then eventually we kind of get used to it. That's the beauty of the human potential, that we can uncondition ourselves and recondition ourselves to what we want to now do, whereas the foundation always remains the same, to serve.
Why is it that this lesson to serve is very hard to find in this world? When I look out there, I don't remember being taught that in school. When I used to watch MTV, I didn't see people being put on a pedestal that were serving. When I go on Instagram and TikTok, I don't see service being lauded by everybody. I had to learn the hard way that the service was the ultimate way to find joy.
Right.
And so many people will even listen to us and be like, oh yeah, click, and go back to a default life where we're almost told in this world, consciously or subconsciously, that you gotta get what's yours and then you'll be happy. When you have the jet, you have the money, you have the this, yeah. And yet so many people get there and they feel very hollow and they don't find the joy.
Yeah.
How do we get that lesson out there, and why is it not there? Or is that the beauty of that lesson, because it's not obvious?
Yeah. I think two things I'd like to say. Number one is we live in a world which is a game of narratives. It's all about narratives, right? And the people who sometimes create those narratives are the ones who say, we don't want the world to serve. We don't want the world to serve. We want the world to consume. We want the world to achieve, because if they don't achieve, they don't consume. If they don't consume, we run out of business, right? So it's a game of narratives. It's a battle of narratives. And there's a narrative out there. Have more, consume more, and you'll be happy. I remember this quote by Jim Carrey, I think. He said something very interesting. He said, I'm just paraphrasing, not the exact words. He said, I pray that everything that everybody aspires for and dreams about, I pray that they get it all. Because then they'll know that that's not the answer, right? Because until the time we're just chasing it, we feel probably that's the answer. But we all know that when we reach there, like you said earlier on, we know that that's not the answer. Again, I'm not against material affluence at all. There's nothing wrong with having stuff. But stuff only has utility value, not happiness value. I mean, I wouldn't mind driving in a Lamborghini if somebody gifted me one. What's wrong with having a Lamborghini? But to think that Lamborghini makes me happy is an erroneous notion. To have a beautiful 10-bedroom apartment or even a massive bungalow, what's the problem? It's okay. But to think that that's what makes me happy is an erroneous notion. So I think it's the narrative, a narrative that have more and then you will be happy, is what I think the issue is. I asked a friend of mine, what's your equation for happiness? He said, happiness is directly proportional to what you have. I said, hang on, man. Which means then people who have the most would be the happiest. Then he gave it a thought. He said, I think happiness is inversely proportional to what you have. Which means the less you have, the happier you are. I said, hang on, man. Which means the homeless people would have been the happiest. So there are two movements. There's the hedonistic movement, hedonism, materialism, there's minimalism. So hedonism and materialism is happiness is directly proportional to what you have. But that's not the answer. And minimalism is you say, okay, the minimum you have, you're going to be happy. But if minimum was if you've chosen minimalism after having so much as a movement, but the homeless have already had minimal. They're not happier either. So I told this friend of mine, Happiness is neither directly proportional nor inversely proportional to what you have. It has nothing to do with what you have. What you have only helps you with your standard of living. How you live helps you with your standard of life or your happiness, right? So when it comes to that joy, that happiness, that fulfillment, that contentment, that inner satisfaction, I think there is no debate that service can do that, right? And some people, like you rightly said, learn the lesson the harder way. What if we could include it in our education? What if the celebrities, what if the top influencers spoke about it? And which is why I think we should do that. We should do that. We should use our platforms. We should use what we have today, the medium that we have today, to teach people, to speak to people about this, that selfless service. And we're not saying we need to be 100% selfless or anything, but we need to begin that journey and we can find that satisfaction. So we need to now make that narrative happen. If this is the narrative that has existed for so long, today with the power of social media, today with the power of thought leadership, today with the power of digital media where we can disseminate what's important, what's of value, we, I think, are in the best space in the history of the world so far to be able to bring this message to the world, that service can bring true joy. And then yes, apart from just the battle of narratives, I can say this with hand on my heart, apart from people who are just so hardwired to not see it, like some people are just so hardwired to say, no, I'm not going to see service as joy. I think a good 85 or probably 95% of the people resonate with this principle that service is joy, because they've tasted that experience. They've seen it. May not have gone out just doing something selflessly for your child or for your family, for your dad or for your mom, or a colleague at office who's just covering them up for the weekend because she gave birth to a child and her maternity leave is over. Now she can't come because there's some family emergency, and just cover them up, cover for them. This is joy which cannot be spoken in words, which cannot be defined by mathematical equations. People experience that. And when we are at the receiving end of service, somebody selflessly serves us, we know what that feels like. It strikes a chord deep there within our souls. It's not the mind, it's not the ego, it's not the intellect. We're deeply touched in the very core of our souls. So we know what it feels like. And we know what it feels like when we serve others. So it's just a matter of putting these two together. People have that experience and now creating that narrative. And that's how a revolution can happen. A massive revolution. That, hey, it's okay to have the stuff that you want. No worries. Have the best cars, the best homes, the best clothes, the best gadgets. Have the best bank balances. But look at this too. And that's how that balance can then bring quality to life.
I'm having flashbacks here to
Wow.
people who have served me, where I had that feeling of like, wow, I don't know this person. They don't owe me anything, but they just went out of their way and served me in the time I needed it so much. A teacher, a mentor, a stranger. Absolutely. And it's so touching. It's more touching than when your mom does it,
100%.
even though it's amazing, but you know her. And it happens all the time. And yet we seem to forget the power of that. Also, when we served, we get into this amazing moment where it's this moment of grace, perhaps.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And when I started experiencing service on a regular basis, when I started doing this, I started really untapping everything. And I remember the first year I did London Real, I kept asking myself, like, what am I doing here? This was never a business. This was never anything. This was just me doing this because it felt like the right thing to do. And every year I would look in the mirror and I'm like, there's no money here. What are you doing? But I would be like, but your life is better. I had more friends. I was happier. And I was like, all right, we're going to do this one more year. And next year I'd come around and be like, wait a second. I mean, I'm even better. I've got more things. I got more energy, I must be doing something right. So I just, as an engineer, I didn't know why it was happening, but I knew it was happening. So I said, all right, let's do it another year. And then I started to see this great thing. And if anyone's watching or listening, definitely see if you can meditate on this concept a little bit. I've got a former guest. His name is Wes Watson, probably very different from you and me. He spent 10 years in the California penitentiary system. He is now, I guess, a celebrity ex-con, as you would say. And he said, Brian, he's like, the only time I can find happiness is when I'm teaching my students and serving my students. Right. And he said it to me in such a way where I thought when I teach, and I have an academy and I teach, it is that one moment of the day that I forget about all of my problems. And I'm in this flow state where they're more important.
Absolutely.
And then I come out of it and I'm like, wow, if I really think about it, that is a beautiful, beautiful place to be, where I can actually escape what sometimes can be a world of my concerns.
Correct.
And so another piece of evidence that it's a wonderful thing, and a place we all need to go to. We've all been of service, but probably we don't go out of our way to engineer it into our lives. And like you said, you can have both. I agree. You can have the bank balance, you can have the Lambo, and then if you put the service in there,
brilliant.
Icing
on top of the cake.
So 26 years ago was 1997. The internet was barely getting started, I remember. Now, 26 years later, it's everywhere.
Yeah.
You know, and I want to jump into the book shortly, but have you noticed that the people that you serve are different? Is there more anxiety? Is there more depression? Is there more narcissism? Is there more, all these things that you talk about in their book? Have you noticed that because of mobiles, social media, interconnectedness, comparison? What is your take overall on that phenomenon?
No, 100%. I definitely have seen it increase.
Okay.
100%.
Okay.
And it's all because of connectivity, right? Because
isn't that supposed to make us happier?
Yeah. Earlier we were just looking at two people and feeling insecure.
Right.
Today we look at 200 people and feel insecure. We can look at 2,000 people's Instagram stories and feel insecure, feel FOMO. Oh, he's in London doing a London Real podcast and I'm sitting in Mumbai and nobody's calling me for a podcast. You know? Nobody's inviting me for a podcast. So earlier, nobody got to see that. We were in our own lives. Yeah. Lives were private. Yeah. Lives were private. And lives are meant to be private. Right? That's how we live our lives. Again, the internet has done so much good. Right? Which is why I feel the internet, social media, is like a tool. We have to know how to use it well. Nothing's good or bad. If we don't know how to use it right, it's going to be a bane rather than a boon to us as individuals. So I feel we led very private lives earlier, and now life is very public. Everything's everywhere. We post everything. It's less about eating, but taking a picture and posting that this is what I'm eating. Right? It's not so much relishing the food. It's not being there, but it's being there on the social media platforms, not being there in the moment. So lives have changed, right? What I've also seen over the years is people. I've always seen people to have that potential sincerity in them. That has never changed. That will never change. People are good. Right? People are good. We always look at the bad side of people, and the bad side of people is so much blown out of proportion that we create a world which is only filled with bad people. Right? People have the inherent potential to be good. They're good people. They have sincerity. They have genuineness. So what if social media is taken over? So what? There's Instagram stories all over the place. So what? Now I see 2,000 people and feel insecure. But I still have that sincerity. And to be able to fan that spark of sincerity and say, hey, look, this is there and it's okay to have it. But how do you navigate through it without being affected by it is what we need to learn. Because the sincerity is there, the goodness is there, right? So I feel that change has happened, but what hasn't changed is the goodness in people. What hasn't changed is the sincerity in people. In fact, over the years, people have kind of come to a conclusion that materialism isn't the answer. Right? Although they're running after it, they're chasing it, but there's something that's kind of resonating in there, saying, I don't think this is the answer. Why suddenly there are people who are listening to a monk like me, if there was no sincerity?
To continue watching the rest of the episode for free, visit our website londonreal.tv or click the link in the description below.